Welcome, everybody, to this episode of the Sod Fathers Sodcast, the Meet Your Herdmates Sodcast. I'm ashamed that I didn't think of that sooner. Hat tip to Andrew. I am Don Pedro, aka the Sod Father, and I am very pleased to be joined today by Yogi Parker, all the way from Connecticut. Let's give it up for Yogi. Yay! How you doing, Yogi?
I am doing fantastic, Peter, and thank you for having me on the show. And technology is amazing when it works.
Yes, it is. And it's something else when it doesn't. So far, so good. Um, so who is Yogi and how did he get to sitting in that comfy looking chair right now?
Well, I am a former lot of things. I've kind of bounced around a lot of different stuff in my life, but most recently, before I was sitting in this comfy chair, I was an OTR trucker. And I was an OTR
Over the
trucker,
road?
yes, over the road trucker for about 7 years, long haul. Um, I've also done a number of other things from sports to pro wrestling, bouncing, working nonprofits for at-risk youth and impoverished areas in the U.S. and around the world. So I've had kind of a diverse background. And I'm also a former extremely fat guy.
Extremely fat. Okay, let's define that.
At my highest weight, that I have actually mentally recorded and actually weighed, I may have gotten bigger. I was 618 pounds.
618 pounds on how tall a frame?
I'm a 6'6".
Okay. And you are now?
I am now 279 and from a size 68 waist down to a 38.
Wow. So you are less than half the man you used to be.
I am, yes, and I've misplaced a lot of me.
Well, here's hoping you don't find it. So how long did that take?
It's been a spit and sputtering process for about 4.5 years.
But that's
So
remarkable, 4.5 years.
yeah, my initial journey, I actually dropped a lot of weight really fast, and then was just eking along for a couple of years, and dropping a little bit of weight, dropping a little bit of weight, gaining a little bit of weight, and then just recently went from about 360 to 279.
Wow. Okay. So maybe we better rewind a little bit. Were you this heavy, that heavy when you were driving?
I actually became this heavy driving. I started gaining. I've struggled with weight my whole life, and when I was in high school, there was a point when I graduated, I was almost 600 pounds,
From high
and
school?
from high school, and then I lost when I after high school. I ended up accidentally living in the Philippines for a couple of years and lost a lot of weight, got down to about 290. And with the frame that I had back then at 290, I almost had a six pack. You could see the muscle beneath the skin. And because I spent most of my life powerlifting and I had a lot of bulk muscle to carry. Um, and then I gained some weight back when I came back to the US and kind of hovered around the 360 mark for a long time. Got up to the 400s when just before I started doing the pro wrestling. Then I got into a major car accident. Couldn't work out for a long time. Tried a lot of things. Really tried to work hard on controlling my diet, and even went vegetarian for a while. And when I started driving the truck, my weight really skyrocketed, doing primarily a vegetarian diet, and I became a 618-pound vegetarian.
Mm. Mm. Wow. Okay.
We're on a
So, so, um, that's got to be, I mean, truck cabs aren't that roomy. It's a climb up and down. That had to be a hardship on its own, but what other kinds of problems could come in that profession from that condition?
Well, trucking's probably one of the most unhealthy industries on the planet. And they talk about shift work when you're working all kinds of nighttime schedules and things like that, messing up your circadian rhythm, creating stress, leading to heart disease, insulin problems, diabetes, things like that. We don't have a sleeping pattern. We're up one night, asleep during the day, and then a couple nights later, we're awake during the day and sleeping at night. So there's a lot of stress from inconsistent sleeping patterns. We're exposed to a lot of toxic materials through diesel fumes, gas fumes, just the stuff at the pump, the chemicals that we got to come in contact with, and sometimes the things that we haul. We're on the road sitting position pretty much 11 hours a day. And a lot of guys will actually drive almost that full 11 hours with barely getting up ever. So they're sitting majority of their day. And from a lot of research, we know that's like the new cigarette smoking. That is extremely detrimental to your health. The stress of dealing with, it's a stressful work environment for most people. You're in an industry that preaches that they respect the drivers, but often doesn't practice that they respect the drivers for their timing, the ability to make money, things like that. We're on regulated amount of time federally that we're allowed to work. And there's a lot of times that companies do not respect that. And so when we're trying to pay bills and things like that, everybody struggles with money. But when we're trying to pay bills and people cut into our drive time, because we spend hours being loaded or offloaded, or they screw up, overload us, we have to go get reworked. So that puts a lot of emotional stress on you when you're trying to pay your bills. And then the food you have access to is generally horrible. A lot of guys eat out of C-stores, and even the classic mom and pop truck stop diners have gone the way of the dinosaur. And so we're left to a lot of commercially processed food, seed oils, things like that, that are just really not healthy for you.
What happens if someone holding a commercial driver's license develops type 2 diabetes and progresses past insulin resistance or metabolic syndrome to diabetes?
Well, the DOT has gotten very restrictive with people's health conditions, and you have to go for a physical within a certain amount of time, and that can vary based on what your last physical was. So generally, if they check you out and everything seems okay, every 2 years you got to go into a physical. But some of the guys I was driving with, because their test markers on their cholesterol, their diabetes, their sugar handling, whatever medical condition that they had, created limits. Some guys had to go back and get tested, DOT physical once every year. One of the guys I knew had to go every 3 months, because what they're worried about is you getting into an accident because of your medical condition. There was a case in Florida where a guy, after a DOT physical, and they said everything's fine, ended up going into a diabetic coma while he was driving and plowed into a bunch of people. There's one of the things that the DOT is focusing on right now because of obesity is sleep apnea and people not getting proper sleep. And so they're forcing drivers to get sleep studies, especially if you're over a certain size. And they will not authorize your license until you go get the sleep study. And then you have to get hooked up with the apnea breathing machine at night, the sleep apnea machine, which means you need an inverter, which means you need to run your truck and idle your truck, which cuts into your fuel bill, which cuts into your pay. And then you got to go back into, and every time you go to these physicals, you're taking a day off where you could be making money and you're not. And
Wow. Yep.
okay,
I'm sorry. Could you say that again, please?
these sleep studies do come out of your pocket. Most of the time, your company does not pay for them.
Mm.
and cheap.
Okay. So let's get back to Yogi's journey from where he was to where he is. What was you, I understand the fits and starts little by little, but overall, what was it that got you started on what you think was the most effective strategy that you used for this? I could only call it a transformation.
Well, I actually initially started eating the carbohydrate restrictive diet um, because I was concerned about brain health. So I was eating a high fat carbohydrate restrictive diet, otherwise known as keto. And I actually didn't think I was going to lose weight doing it. I really didn't believe it. I didn't believe in the hype. I was resigned to being the massively big guy. I carried my weight fairly decently. People were often shocked about my weight when they actually found out how much I weighed. And I was, that was my identity for a long time. I was the big guy. And when I went to keto, it was actually because I was experiencing symptoms associated with CTE, which is chronic traumatic encephalitis, or chronic, I forgot the acronym for it, but it's a condition that comes when you have received a lot of, or even just one concussion in your life. It can
Mm.
cause it, but it's prone to athletes, and it's prone to survivors of domestic violence who have been hit a lot. Um, and I had been hit in the head a lot, and I started experiencing uncontrollable emotions, a lot of depressions, bad thoughts, fatigue, not being able to hold a thought in my head, short-term memory loss. And I heard this bald-headed dude on the radio named Kevin Rutherford. He hosts a show called Let's Truck, and he started getting into health. And he started a show called Destination Health. And he started talking about keto. Again, I thought it was, I just thought, oh yeah, this guy, keto, yeah, you can't eat fat and lose weight. But then they started talking about keto for brain health, and my ears perked up, because I had been looking into CTE because one of my mentors at that time had committed suicide
Oh.
because of it. And I when I started looking at CTE because of what they were doing, I was started clicking a lot of boxes and on the symptoms, and I was like, man, and you can't be diagnosed with CTE until you die. They have to dissect your brain. So, but I knew I was having a lot of related symptoms. So I switched my diet for brain health, and I ate extremely high fat, like 90% of my calories came from fat.
What were you
And
eating?
oh, I was doing the Fatty Joe bulletproof style coffees and bone broth, and like a lot, with like half a stick of butter in each one, and big scoops of coconut oil, because they told me fat was healthy for my brain. Um, so I kind of went overboard, and
Mm.
I had my restaurant contraband bag that because restaurants don't allow outside food, but I didn't trust the food inside the restaurant to give me the right oils and things that I needed for my brain. So I had like my salad dressings and things from, like, Primal Kitchens, and I had my Kerrygold butter in there, and my Redmond's real salt, and all these different things in my little bag. And that was my restaurant contraband bag that I'd bring into the restaurant and use instead of their stuff. So I'd order a steak and drop half a stick of butter on the thing. And so I was eating extremely high fat, and at one point was very low carb, almost zero carb. And it was something I had to transition into as well. I started more of a paleo end and transitioned into the because my digestion couldn't handle the high fat initially. And I started losing weight, and I found out I was 618 pounds when I walked across a truck scale at a terminal, and some guy yelled at behind me, goes, "Damn!" And I looked at the light and went, "Oh." That's a
Wow.
lot. And I looked around to see if anything else was on the scale, and there wasn't. So uh, yeah. And so I started realizing my pants didn't fit. My shirts got baggier because at the time I was wearing 10X shirts, and I was wearing size 68 pants, and I was realizing that these things were getting very loose. They were outgrowing me for some reason.
Yeah, strange.
Yeah. So I went into a truck stop bathroom where they have those little put your quarter in scales. And this was probably almost a year after starting keto before I weighed myself again. And I had lost over 100 pounds. I was down to, I believe I was down to like almost 500 pounds flat. And I went, okay, maybe this wasn't fake.
But your
Maybe,
brain, but your brain health, if you will, improved quickly. So that was your initial entry into it. And then,
well, there were some other factors too, but I noticed that one, I didn't have to pull over and take naps all the time like I previously did. My memory, there was a point where I felt like my brain was underwater, and I was a diver before. I know what it's like to go underwater and be at atmosphere and be at pressure. My head felt like that just while I was driving the truck. And it literally felt like there was water there, and it made it very hard to think, very hard to focus. Those within a few weeks of going real keto with that high fat, those symptoms really started mitigating. I didn't have to take naps all the time. I noticed that I didn't have to eat all the time. Like, truckers are notorious. One of the things that truckers do all the time is, like, you'll see drivers, they have their like snack, like, storage thing right next to them, and they're constantly eating as they're driving, and often not the best things. I'm talking like Little Debbie's and Mountain Dews and things like that. A ton of energy drinks to stay focused, but they're just constantly eating, and a lot of it's because you're eating this high carb diet that's triggering an insulin response, triggering a ghrelin suppression or leptin suppression and ghrelin uptick, which ghrelin is your hunger hormone, and it's making you hangry like all the time. And I felt that way when I was doing the vegetarian thing. I was hungry all the time. So there's been more than one all you can eat restaurant that has banned me.
Brazilian steakhouses.
No, I'm talking like Chinese places and things
Oh,
like that. High carb places. Oh, I'd go to town. There's a pizza place that had like these giant New York pizzas where each slice is probably close to 4 foot, and they had a contest at one of them. And this is when I was in high school, that if you could eat the entire pizza by yourself, you got a free pizza plus a free dessert, or coupon for a free pizza plus a free dessert, and the pizza you just ate was free. After a week, I had a stack of coupons, and the guy's like, "Dude, you're done. No, this is it." Oh,
okay. So other than hearing this man on the radio, what sort of information did you have to help you get started?
well, there's an awesome free amount of information on podcasts, and I got really into listening to podcasts while I was on the road. Initially, it was for the other radio shows, but I found out there was keto podcasts, and I started listening to get those information that was presented on those shows. And then I started hearing them reference books by people like Gary Taubes and Nina Teicholz, and I just started getting them. One of the first keto books I got was Jimmy Moore's Keto Clarity, and that was kind of my gateway drug. And then I just started diving into it, and so it was either podcasts or audio books while I was driving. And I've come to the conclusion that if you're a truck driver, there is no reason you can't be one of the most educated people on the planet with these resources now, because all you got is time, and you can be listening to audiobooks and podcasts as you drive and and I didn't just listen to keto stuff, but I had a wide variety of interests. So, but the keto stuff I really took note of when I was driving, and that was the predominant amount of my information. And then I got turned on to the Nutritional Therapy Practitioner program. I haven't been able to attend yet. It's something I hope to do, but I got their reading list, and I just started buying the books off of it. And I got a lot of the books, whatever I could, off of audio, so I can listen to when I was driving down the road. And then everything else, when I went for my home time, part of my care packages was like 4 or 5 new books that I'd bring with me on my truck.
So that's this next next occupation on your very diverse resume is nutritional practitioner. Is that what you said? And keto coach, is that right?
Nutritional therapy practitioner, and I'm also looking at the primal health coach program. I do want to continue and do like a keto program as well, but those are the first 2 that I'm looking at, because keto really seems to be a panacea for a lot of things, but it's because it's an altered lifestyle. Your previous lifestyle has been altering your health in a very bad way. And so when you go keto, you're cutting out a lot of the foods that have been hurting you for a long time. But I do have an understanding too that may not be a panacea for everybody's problems. And I want to understand a more diverse systems of different people, because the more I've read, the more I've come to find that there's genetic conditions where people can't process fats and store it in their body very well, and they do have to rely on carbohydrates in order to survive. The guy that created the supplement UCAN, he created it because his son has that condition, and before he created UCAN, which is what's called a super starch, they had to wake his son up every few hours to feed him because his son could not store fat. And so there's more above the sun, but most people's conditions are caused by what seems to be carbohydrate ODing, overdose.
So you've gotten to see a lot of the country, and I've gotten to see some of the same country, only driving much smaller vehicles. And I can, not to be disparaging, but walking into some of these stops along the highway where you're assaulted by the smell of, cinnamon buns, before you could ever get to the counter where they make sandwiches, but ask for one as a salad instead of a sandwich, right?
Right.
There are things that you can get from some of these places that will work, but you've got to be able to walk past the mountain of sports drinks and like I said, the overpowering smell of cinnamon buns and the candy counter and all the other stuff that's right there. So do you have sort of, if push comes to shove, do you have an emergency sort of go-to road food?
Yeah, I actually have a few. I actually kept an emergency kit in my truck.
Okay.
And so in my actual emergency kit, I kept keto chow along with freeze-dried heavy cream, freeze-dried butter, canned red feather New Zealand butter, and some canned like Keystone meats. Oh, there you go. And actually had some Bega cheese in a can underneath my bunk, as well as a lot of canned seafoods. As best seafoods as I could get. And oftentimes I would order a massive amount of products online to be waiting for me when I went home to restock my truck. Another one that I found too while I was on the road was 2 backpacker meal companies that either have specialize in keto or have keto friendly meals. And I'm very used to eating backpacker meals because that was one of my hobbies, is I loved to go camping and backpacking and stuff. So I would have those in my bunk. One of them is Next Mile Meals and the other one is Wild Zora. So I had those. And Wild Zora they're more of a paleo thing, but they do have meals that are acceptable on a keto diet because they do avoid grains and things like that. And Next Mile Meals is straight up keto. So I had those under my bunk, and I also kept a lot of food on my truck because I also like to cook. And so I cooked on my truck even before I went keto. And I had in my truck, I had a built-in fridge. I had an inverter so I could run power. And I had bought an extra dorm fridge and threw it up on the top bunk and turned the temperature all the way down and turned it into a freezer and was able to store some extra meat in there.
Excellent.
So, yeah, so I cooked a lot in my truck using the lunchbox ovens, Instant Pots, Ninja Foodies, crock pots, and electric skillets and camp stoves. So that was my stuff that I went through. But when I was eating out, which you do because of time constraints, too tired to cook, things like that, you had to eat wherever you stopped. And so you had to find what was available there. And almost every place I stopped at, you could find something. It may have not been the best option of grass-fed, massaged, beer-drunk cattle, but there was something that you could get that was more nutritious and less damaging than other products that are loaded with carbs.
So in many of these places, they don't serve breakfast just in the morning. You could get it 20, so you could get eggs and some meat with that and cheese. If that fits your diet, you can get that sort of thing, just no hash browns, skip the fruit, no juice, and you're good, basically.
My breakfast of choice, if there was a diner available, was steak, eggs, extra bacon. So I'd get a regular bacon and an extra bacon. And if I was feeling froggy, I might get some sauteed or steamed broccoli.
Froggy. What?
Just if I felt that I could take down, I needed a little bit more room filled up in my stomach.
Okay. Outstanding. So as I said before we started, if the schedule holds, this episode will release on Thanksgiving. So gratitude, Thanksgiving, our attitude as we live life is a critical part of wellness, is a critical part of health. So a couple things I'd like to touch on with you. One is that aspect of gratitude. And then the other is, if anybody were to start a new way of eating the week of Thanksgiving and then go home and be faced with everything that traditionally was served, it might not be the best timing, but you can always sort of start again, right? Fall down twice, get up 3 times, right? Kind of. So any thoughts along the lines for those 2 broad sort of topics?
I love gratitude. Your mindset actually affects your physiology. And they found that people who are more content with their lives, the more gratitude they display, are often have better biomarkers than people who are constantly chasing that next big thing, unsatisfied with what's going on, and do not express gratitude. So one of my biggest things of gratitude right now is I've met an amazing lady that I've partnered with. Her name is Carrie Brown. And I get to learn a lot from her. I get to frustrate the heck out of her because I'm not at her level and that's, you know, as far as a lot of things that we do behind the scenes. So I'm sure that makes her pull out some of her hair with me. But she's been very patient, very supportive, and helped me along the way. Of course, I'm grateful for my family. Um, I don't see them much anymore for the past few years because of being on the road. And when I was out driving, I was out, you know, 350 days a year. I'd go home maybe for a period of 3 or 4 days at a time, twice a year. So I didn't see them much, and I haven't seen them for that much for the past few years. And now we live on the other side of the continent. So they're in
And
California.
travel these days is a little different than it used to be.
Yeah, they're still back in the state of confusion. I mean, California, and I'm out here in Connecticut now. So, um, but those are two big things that I'm grateful for, and of course, my health. And I am grateful that I have what I consider an amazing amount of mentors, either people that I have read the books from or listened to podcasts. Everybody that I have listened to that's helped me formulate my lifestyle to help me get healthier, I consider my mentors. And I've now gotten to meet a lot of them that were my mentors, that I like yourself, that were my mentors while I was on the road. And so, you know, people like Gary Taubes and Danny Vega, and from Let's Truck, I have Michael Rutherford, and so many more, Ted Naiman. So I've gotten to meet and pick these people's brains, and some of them on more than one occasion now, which is just pretty amazing.
Yeah, indeed. It's a dangerous thing to start listing people, because you're going to leave some off, and it doesn't mean anything other than memory loss on my part. It is remarkable the people that are willing to share, and who have really invested a lot into getting information available to us. And then some of us get to try to pass that information on to other people. And part of that is sort of like, you know, you can't keep it unless you give it away kind of thing, like that. Again, gratitude in action, and just trying to make sure that more and more people hear this, so that if they choose to, they can, you know, try it themselves, and one, know that they're not going to kill themselves. And it's a proven method, and that there are resources to find more information about it. You don't have to trust what comes out in the food section of the local newspaper. So, but back to the idea of what sorts. So if somebody were wondering and had the time to change, okay, maybe it's too late for the Thanksgiving menu, but we've got holidays coming up right after it. What sorts of foods would fit from the sort of typical holiday table to one that would be one that you would now sit down and eat from?
Well, meat is usually a good go. And you know, as long as you're not covering that meat with a bunch of sugar, you know, sometimes maybe the honey baked ham may not be the best choice, but it may be the better choice. I have been fortunate enough that I, you know, again, live with Carrie Brown. So she's got her Keto for the Holidays cookbook, and she's running a class right now. So she gets to cook all this keto holiday food that I get to eat.
Oh,
So, uh, yeah, but
maybe we'll have to put a link to that.
yeah. So, but, you know, meat is always a good go-to. And frankly, I get very satisfied with that. But you know, it is the holidays, and if you are going to be with family and stuff, and you're going to have experience, and you do happen to have the temptation to go for something that may not be quote unquote keto, just one thing that you always keep in mind: the wagon is very slow, so it's easy to catch up and jump back on.
Nice. I like it.
So that's my thing. But you can, there there are a lot of recipes out there to get your keto treats if you want to do something special for the holidays. I like to suggest to people, if it's a family get together or a potluck, talk to your family, let them know what's going on, or your friends, or wherever you're going, and maybe make some of your own food before you go, and make enough for other people to try.
Mhm.
Make your own food, and that way you got something to eat, and say, it's not to insult grandma and her cookies, but it's something that's important to me, because right now I'm not healthy, and I got too much love and cookies in my life, and now I need a little bit less of the cookies, but I still need the love.
Mm. And um, uh, so there's so much that would still be appropriate. Leafy greens with butter on it, there's nothing wrong. Green beans with butter on it, there's nothing wrong. Green bean, or we make a broccoli cheesy casserole that fits. Like you say, there are recipes to help. Some of our traditional sort of dishes can be adapted as well. So now you've got stuff that's already there and maybe an acceptable version for other people who are used to it and maybe not on your dietary journey yet. But there's lots of ways to go around, and maybe the less we make of it, the less people notice, right? If we don't
Right.
make a big deal, maybe others won't either.
And typically when I went home, when I started the keto thing, if I actually happened to be home during a holiday and there was a holiday meal, I did exactly what you're talking about. But I also volunteered to cook a couple of things
There
to
you
make
go.
sure that
Yeah.
my family was very much not keto, so like there was very little selection that wasn't really high in carbs, other than the meat. So, and
Mhm.
even that sometimes was a little, sketchy. Um, but yeah, you could definitely make your own things and go into it. And yes, the veggies is a great way to go. One of my favorites and I rarely get it because most of my family don't eat it, and I can make a big pot of it and bring it over and know it's all mine, is collard greens. I love me some collard greens. And so, I'll make some collard greens with either a smoked ham hock or turkey neck, and, get some nice seasoning in there, and then toss some a little extra butter on top of that when I'm serving them, and nobody else will touch them. So I'm good.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so
Uh,
I do love that. And like you said, the broccoli and cheese is a popular dish in the house. Or another good one is just to take some broccoli or some cauliflower or a mixture of the both, toss it in some avocado oil with a little bit of melted butter in there, season it up with some nice garlic, salt, pepper, and toss in a few like little minced onions and
hmm.
some Parmesan cheese, and then toss that bad boy in the oven to roast. And roasted cauliflower is awesome. It gets a little bit of a nutty flavor, even if you singe the tops on it a little bit, it's right
Mhm.
there. So
Yeah.
it's a great go. Super easy too.
I'm discovering that this may not be a winning strategy for me to talk about food this time of day. Um, but it's all good. So I really like your message about the wagon doesn't move so fast that you can't catch up if you fall off. Um, and I also, just to encourage people that it's we didn't get here overnight. And just, your example is pretty profound in terms of the transition. But that's still not overnight.
No,
So occasional bumps are okay. You're interested in the long haul, so to speak.
I had them. I'm a popcorn junkie. And when I smell that fresh popping popcorn going, there's times where I go, you know what? I'm gonna have me a little bit of popcorn, and that usually ends up in the giant bucket at the movie theater. Um, So, and there's been those times, but there's times where I know it's going to be, look, I know this is going to probably stall me out for now, but I'm in it for the long haul. And if I do this once and I don't do it, I'm doing this once every 6 months or once every year, it's not going to hurt me as bad as thing. And yes, I have brought my restaurant contraband bag into the movie theater and put my own butter on the popcorn. So, but there's been times where I've come in and like you said, smelt those cinnamon rolls going and went, you know what? I'm going to have a cinnamon roll just for once. And I usually pay the price for that afterwards.
Yes.
And that price I pay usually turns me off of having that cinnamon roll again for a long time. But what I found too is often that smell that makes me want it wasn't as good as actually eating the thing. Like smell was so much better. And then I ate the thing, was really disappointed. It was like, you know what? I don't want this again. So
it's like false advertising.
Yeah, it really is. And so these things are, and you could be keto for a while, they say, all your sugar cravings go away, all your sweet cravings. If that were true, there wouldn't be so many keto sweets on the market. And so you will have that craving every once in a while. And sometimes, willpower sometimes needs to be replenished with a break. There's a lot of studies out right now. There's a guy that wrote a book on willpower. I wish I could remember the title, but they've shown that it diminishes the more you try to hold on to that willpower. It's if you've ever played a video game, that little life force thing that goes down, that's your willpower thing that goes down for a while. So sometimes answering that call every once in a while can help you stay on path, as long as you don't let it open the floodgates and go, well, I screwed up yesterday, I might as well screw up today, and I'll get on it tomorrow. If you do it, okay, I'm done, and move on. Some people don't have that capability. And if you realize that you have that addictive personality that you cannot do that, then definitely don't.
Yeah. And learning, in my case, learning what sort of triggers would lead me closer to it. It's like the brain doesn't go right to where it wants to be. It figures out a circuitous route to, oh, look, I'm here. And, oh, well, as long as I'm here, right? But I mean, that was a process that starts. So if I can learn further back upstream, oh, I've been here before and I'm not going to go back. Life strategies, but those things we build by experience. And as you say, it's a journey for hopefully the rest of our lives. But what I've been impressed with is the idea of increasing our health span, right? Not just lifespan, right? So we all get to pass at some point in this existence. How can I be as healthy as my genes will permit me to be, and the rest of my life circumstances permit me to be, for as long as that's possible? That's an attractive approach for me. And the other thing that I think we talked about a little bit was, and especially around holidays, people can't get home, especially this year. A lot of times we'll use food for more than nutrition. And so the bonding that takes place during shared meals, that's fine. The using it to fill emptiness in our lives, I think, is probably dangerous.
Yeah, I had a conversation with Jessica Reynolds, who's a phenomenal lady. Like she's so amazing. But she talked about that a lot, and food is a drug. And that satisfaction, that endorphin release you get when you eat something that's comforting it's a real thing, and you can overeat anything when you have that craving. And we see a lot of people with trauma in their lives, or high amounts of stress, overeating, even on things that you don't typically associate with overeating, but you can still overeat. And the sugar cravings, because of the endorphin response that you get for the sweet things and stuff like that, can be extremely high when you're stressed out, when you're lonely, and when you are experiencing some sort of trauma in your life.
Oh, well, my brother, we've spent a lot of time here. We've covered a lot of the pasture, wandered around a bit and nibbled on a few daisies and whatever. Okay, that's enough of that. Um, what do you have some sort of final take-home thoughts? We want to make sure that people can find you. And I will put links in descriptors, but for people that are listening, maybe driving and don't have a way to jot down notes, what's the easiest way to find Yogi and Carrie Brown?
Well, carriebrown.com is kind of the master control on everything, so you can go there. We do have a Facebook group called the Keto Kitchen with Carrie Brown and Yogi Parker, and you can come in and join the group. We mainly talk about food and things like that in there, so you can, and if you do come in, you can tag us into a post and say hi. You could always, if you're on Facebook, people do the DM message thing on me all the time, so you could do that, and that's mine is therealyogiparker.com, and or not .com, but the real Yogi Parker on Facebook, and then on Instagram it's at the real Yogi Parker. Twitter, I don't play much in that backgrounds. Every once in a while I check it, but like it's been like once every 6 months.
Good for you.
Yeah, I don't know. Twitter is not really my thing. It seems to be the place where a lot of people just want to get nasty with one another, and it's just not where I want to be. It's not the mindset I want. So every once in a while I pop in and pop back out. But I am on Instagram more regularly than I used to be. We are looking at some other platforms as well, possibly joining in. So, but those are the main places that you can find us.
Well, but I understand that there's this podcast that's called what is it?
We do have, and you were so gracious to join us on there. We do have the podcast that I just started out. It's the Fatty Joe Show, and it's available on all the podcast sites, and it's also on our YouTube channel, the Carrie Brown and Yogi Parker YouTube channel. So you can go there and check it out. And we've had alumni such as Peter Ballerstedt with this amazing farmy doctor-y dude. And we've had Gary Taubes and Nina Teichels I just interviewed today, and several other people, and also some unusual people. Like I interviewed this lady, her name is Nancy Wind, and she does a yoga program, and it's called Peaks and Poses, where she takes people out backpacking into the mountains and then teaches yoga classes. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Nice.
So
Outstanding.
it's pretty cool. So those are the main spots you find us. And we do interact on Facebook. Seems to be the largest platform that we interact on. So that's probably the biggest place to catch us.
Okay. So it's coming up on 6 p.m. It must be close to your dinner time. I appreciate you sharing your story and your information, and I hope it's an encouragement to people who maybe aren't 600 pounds, but maybe they've been 50 pounds overweight for too long, and they've tried what they thought was supposed to work and it didn't work, and they blame themselves. The doctor doesn't believe them when they tell them what they've been doing, or the trainer, or whoever they've been trying to work with. And I hope that they'll find some information that will work for them. And for that, I'm grateful for you sharing your story with us.
And I'm grateful for having the opportunity to come on, Peter. It's I love the fact that you started a podcast, and I am looking forward to binge listening as many episodes as I can this weekend when I'm out doing yard work.
Excellent. And with that, Sodfather will sign off. Please, though, before too much time elapses, you will say hello to Carrie for me.
I will right away. And I look forward to the time where we can have an ice cream social here at Casa de Caryville in Nutmegger Forest that I get to attend.
Excellent. As soon as possible, it's a deal and a
Awesome.
date. Thank you.